what's going to bring people back to that high street? It's not your chain of coffee shops because you can get coffee anywhere. It's not your clothes shop because you can do it online. It's the barber shop, the hairdresser that has cyclical visits where someone says, whilst I'm on the high street, I like the look of that jumper, I'm going to buy it. I need a birthday card, I'm going to go and actually look for one. Do you know what? It's a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I'm going to take that home for my missus, for my mother. That's what I'm going to do. It's our industry that fuels whatever else goes on the high streets. And that's what we need to make someone understand. The pubs shut the pub down but opened up a plastic hatch on the side of the pub. You brought your plastic cup and you filled up with pints, and they made it work. We couldn't do it.
And upsettingly, just to jump in, they got exactly the same grants as we did. They got zero VAT, which is something I want to talk to you about. And this is an industry that's got at least a 9% reclaim. So they were in deficit for VAT, whereas from our point of view, we went in for 6 weeks, sometimes 3 months in between the lockdowns, and we incurred 20% VAT all the way along there. So no, sorry, but it irks me something rotten, I must admit. Yeah. Never thought the mullet was going to make a comeback, but it's
Do you want to hear my opinion on the mullet?
Go.
You're going to love this. When we as an industry haven't trained properly for a number of years and no one knows what they're doing, we recreate the mullet because basically it's a shit haircut.
Welcome to The Noble Barber. This is a podcast for barbers by barbers, cutting through the crap of the industry. We all want to know how our businesses can run better. I want to talk to people who've done it, messed it up and got it right second time round, and can tell us the way that you and I can make our businesses better. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of The Noble Barber. I'm here today with Edward Hemmings, Creative Director, L&D, Education Director, L&D. You know, how many hats?
There's quite a few hats, to be honest with you.
But I've been wanting to get you. I'm really pleased you've made it. Thank you. Because obviously, I've over the course of these podcasts, we've discussed training quite a lot. And we've spoken to a variety of institutes. And obviously, from your point of view as a provider, you're at the kind of heart and the centre of the kind of apprenticeship debate. So if we can pile straight in and how do you feel, or how does L&D as a provider provide?
How does it work? Okay, it's very simple. I think being in the industry for so long, we've become the go-to provider, if you like. People know us. When they think of education, they think of training, apprenticeships, whether it's hairdressing or, in this instance, barbering. We're probably the people that you'd pick up the phone to. We've been around for a long time. Myself, I've been in the industry 32 years this year. My old man started in 1960 and still in a few days a week speaking to our employees. Well, you can't, it's in your blood. Yeah. And I think probably we've become that sort of position in the industry, that the trusted name. The majority of our trainees obviously are in hairdressing. We do have barbershops we work with quite closely, work with for a number of years, who put their apprentices through us. But of course, it's a much smaller number than hairdressing.
I mean, really, because obviously here we're talking to barbershop owners primarily, and I think there's a lack of understanding for a lot of us as to what having an apprentice is about. We've got a generation of barbershop owners who didn't do an apprenticeship, who've learned in different ways. So how does an apprenticeship, if I employ an apprentice, how does that work with my relationship with L&D?
So initially, and the most important thing, and the one reason there's perhaps less barbershops take on apprentices, you need to have a payroll. So your apprentice needs to be paid on a payroll, PAYE, every month, minimum of 30 hours per week at a set level. So that's apprentice wage between 16 to 18. It's the apprentice wage if they're over 18 in year one, and then up to the national minimum / national living wage into year 2 of their apprenticeship. Sure. And that's non-negotiable. It can't be, well, I pay them cash or a check and a pay slip. It's got to be set through.
So does that become more problematic with kind of businesses that are a collective of businesses? Presumably, you could employ an apprentice, would be the only person on your payroll.
It could be, but then who's going to pay the apprentice? Because if you went up to someone who's renting space 2 days a week, for example, say, well, you're going to pay for your apprentice. You go, no, I'm not. Yeah. Thank you very much. That's not what I want.
From L&D, do you do all the practical training for them?
Completely. Yeah, completely from the beginning. We do everything. We cover the qualification. We cover all the other stuff. There's English and maths that has to be done, functional skills.
Yep.
It's all covered in that 18-month. I mean, some of it, honestly, you have to question it. But
Sure.
that's what you got to do.
Okay. And so during those 18 months, they'd be with you how much?
Very simple. We run a two system, either one day each week, or we do a monthly block, a weekly block every month. So Monday to Friday, every 5th week.
Oh, okay.
And that's something we've done historically. It's our preferred method. We love it. Probably doesn't work if you've only got one apprentice in the business, to lose someone for a whole week. And that's how it works.
Okay. Now, the big space, it always strikes me in the conversations we've had is that there's kind of 3 areas of training. You've got the paid for courses where, you can go along and train for 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks, etc. Pay for those, come through having experienced, 60, 70, 80 haircuts plus. I met a great guy, Liam, who's really, excelling. It was one of the most inspired chats because he's really thrown himself at it, and you can see the passion and how much he wants to do it. And then you obviously get some coming out of there who are arriving expecting to walk straight behind a chair, and there's a lack of experience, if you like, behind the chair experience. And then the other gripe we tend to have is local authority colleges, where it feels like you're wasting your apprentice's time one day a week.
Yeah.
How does that fit with your model?
Definitely not apprentices. That's often the confusion. Someone thinks they're doing the colleges call it full-time course, don't they? It's 2 days a week. It costs you a couple of £100 because they get funded by English and maths and all the other nonsense.
Sure.
So you know what? I'm going to say it. Don't waste your time. Literally don't waste your time. The apprentice route works very well if your salon owner is set up to work that well. And the private route, I think, also works very well, depending on how it's done. Look, Anthony, I'm very honest. We run something very different. I never tell a potential barber student how many models they're going to do a day. In my opinion, that's dangerous. I can teach you to be a bad barber doing 10 bad haircuts a day. I could teach you to be a really skillful barber doing 1 model a day perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. When we start selling education by the number you're doing, I don't think that's selling great education. Other businesses might differ, but that's always been our point of difference. I'd rather you spend your whole day perfecting that one look than rushing your way through 10
and
each
so,
week.
While we're on funding, how are my apprentices, if I was going to send an apprentice to L&D, how are they funded? What's it going to cost me?
The government will cover the full cost of an apprentice unless they are over 18. So if they're 19 plus, you will make a 5% contribution to their training, which currently for hairdressing would be it's 5% of £11,000 for the funding. Barbering's also just gone up to 9,000, so it'll be 5% of 9,000, which is 450.
Okay.
I looked into that just because I thought that might have been one of the questions.
L&D's really associated with hairdressing. In my mind, L&D, my whole career growing up through my route, there was always L&D was their associate of the hairdressing industry. But obviously, with the very small amount of research I have done, there's very much a men's hairdressing route that you've now or always had?
Always been. I'll give you a bit of history. Prior to about 20 plus years ago, when the men's and ladies qualification split. So originally you do an NVQ level 2. When I trained, you did both.
Yeah.
It split 20 something years ago. We were the first hairdressing group to put men's on the fellowship stage, for example. I'll never forget turning up to, would have been Wembley still. And I got a team of male models and they've gone to me, what are you doing? I'm going on stage here. We're doing men's hairdressing. No, this is the fellowship. We don't do that. I said, well, I'm really sorry. They're there. I'm going to do it. And it was a bit of a, wow.
Yeah.
We then went through do you remember the metrosexual stage when David Beckham first came out in his, with all those looks? And in all honesty, Tony, we got left behind at that stage. We turned our back on the next big thing, which was the beard and tats. And there were other people ready to do beard and tats. And we kind of didn't push it. We pushed our hairdressing side. We didn't want to do that form of barbering. We didn't feel that that was where we were. You know, everyone needs to have their own expertise. But recently it's coming back as fashions have changed. And I'll tell you a great story if you don't mind.
No, crack on, that's what it's here for. It's what it's here for, please.
Are we okay with a bit of bad language if it's exactly what someone said to me? Okay.
No censorship.
So we're talking about 10 years ago. Boy comes to us from a great barbershop out in sort of Hertfordshire way. Very cool lad. Already got a few tattoos, got the cool glasses, the carrot jeans, you know, baggy hair, skin tight at the ankles. And he's called Jess. And he's done his first couple of days with us, and we got a few problems, and my academy principal's come up. He said, Edward, you've got to talk to Jess. We're having problems with him. He don't want to learn anything. It's okay, send him up to me. And we're having a chat. I said, Jess, what's the problem, mate? He said, mate, this ain't barbering. I said, what do you mean this ain't barbering? He said, I ain't even used my clippers. I've been here 4 days. I said, okay, Jess. I said, look, we need to teach a method. But I said, I'll tell you what, I like you. I said, you look cool. I said, can you go home tonight and can you Google Oasis? He said, what, the drink, mate?
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, he was 17, 10.
Yeah.
Oasis by that time had been split up for 5 or 10 years. I said, no, Jesse, Oasis, the band. I never heard of them. I said, okay, do that for me. Investigate Oasis for me and come back tomorrow. I said, we'll have a chat and then I'm going to change the whole of my course just for you. He said, would you do that for me? I said, you do the simple thing for me. Google Oasis. Tomorrow I'm going to change what we do. We're going to teach you what you want to learn. It's all right, mate. He went, I said, by the way, please stop calling me mate. He said, all right, mate. So, fine. Following morning, he comes in with this great smile. He said, me, mate, I did what you asked. He said, you seen their bleating hair? I said,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
He said, one of the geezers got hair down here with this short fringing sticker. I said, right. I said, and if you go back and I ask you to Google the Rolling Stones, you'll go back 20 years and they had hair down here. I ask you to Google the Beatles, you go back another 20 years, they got these long haircuts. Go back another 20 years. Elvis Presley had a bob greased back. I said, I tell you what, go back 2,000 and something years, you'd never see Jesus with a grade 2 flat top.
Yeah.
He said, so what you're saying is things happen and come around. I said, absolutely, Jess. I said, we want to teach you to be the barber that can do everything, not the barber that just shaves heads. And you know, we stuck with that. It became unpopular because those were fashions.
Yeah, I mean, you can see now everyone's back again talking about the Oasis looks, talking about the mullets back.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought the mullet was going to make a comeback, but it's do
you want to hear my opinion on the mullet?
Go.
You're going to love this. When we as an industry haven't trained properly for a number of years and no one knows what they're doing, we recreate the mullet because basically it's a shit haircut.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw the... I saw curtains came back not so far away, and I think I'll give the mullet the edge on a curtains these days.
It's one of those haircuts.
Without scissor work, you are lost.
Completely.
And I think that is something that certainly you go back 2-3 years. Being a king of the fade was a vital part.
Yeah.
Not being able to fade, not being able to do a proper razor cut skin fade. Yeah. Was a problem for any barber.
It was a
lot of hairdressers struggled at that point. They really couldn't.
Well, that's why we turned away from that side because you've got to be an expert at what you do. Yeah. The issue was no one knew what to do with this above, which is where the grease back look came from because you just stick a load of gear and it go whoosh.
I don't know. I still miss the pompadaur though, mate.
I think, to be honest
with you, in more ways than one.
Yeah, no, completely.
But I think that's absolutely right. And without that ability to and that's the next bit I want to get onto is about leading trends.
Yeah.
The one thing about our industry, with hair is that the trends will return, but there's always someone that's leading them through.
Yeah.
And you see, certainly from photographic work that and media, that you suddenly see this shift happening.
Yeah.
The hairdressing industry was probably a bit further forward with fashion shots and awards and that kind of stuff. But barbershops and the barber industry is right back in there now.
Well, I think that, interestingly, the barbers were always way ahead of the tribal thing. I genuinely believe that. I think whilst hairdressers we were into the fashion, we're into London Fashion Week, we were into constant change. barbers actually were so far ahead of the game with there was a look that became a barber, a tribe. You were part of a tribe much quicker. And therefore, in social media wise, barbers were way ahead of the game when it came to social media. They really were. They realised that if you get your social media output right, you got free advertising. Yeah. They were years ahead. Didn't mean that the skills were there, and that's no disrespect to the top barbers in the game, because of course they got the skills. If they didn't have the skills, they wouldn't be where they were. But I genuinely believe, like fashion, we need to look at education and make sure that it's all covered, because you never want to be that barber that sends people across the road to the unisex salon. Can you even say unisex salon anymore? No. I mean, it's, you never want to be that barber, and that's what's become so important to us.
Yeah. And you're finding the apprenticeship numbers have recovered, COVID, post-COVID, post-online?
We are now, we're about 2/3 of the way back to pre-pandemic levels, which is pretty good, because actually looking nationally, the numbers are close to 50% of what they were.
I mean, that's the big thing that, even personally we found, and I've certainly I've been told by everyone I speak to, you're just not getting the apprentices you used to. You'd be looking to employ, and you'd find, where you get 7, 8, 9, 10 people appear. You're scratching around for 1 or 2 people to turn up. So there does seem like there's less people coming into the industry.
I think there is. Look, we talked before. I've got 4 kids, and I know how bloody hard it was for them at their ages during that pandemic, when you're sitting at home doing your education. We were very strict. We had doors open, no closed doors. My wife, when I was doing our lives and stuff, she was up and down the stairs making sure each kid was doing the work they was doing. Wow. She was homeschooling my Daisy would have been 3 at that time. She was on it. But something, if the kids didn't want to be educated on that day, they'd close their laptop down, send an email to the teacher and say, sorry, my Wi-Fi's failed. So you got, over that year, 18 months, you got kids leaving school who weren't rightly prepared to get out of their bedrooms and go and work. I have to say, thank God the kids this last year, the last
they've
been great. I got to tell you that we've got communication, we've got eye contact, we've got motivation, and so it's getting better again. Do they still want to be hairdressers? I'm not sure as many, but we're also not being very clever. We're advising all of our salon owners now, employ from within. You've got a brilliant clientele, and your brilliant clientele love coming to you, and this is the same for barbershops. Tell them there's job opportunities. If they love coming to you and they love what you're doing, and they see that you've created a great life for yourself, why wouldn't they want their son, daughter, niece, nephew to do it? Most shops now have a computer system. Perhaps send them a text message this month, not 10% off. Have you got anyone that wants to join our wonderful salon, our wonderful barber shop? We've got to be a bit cleverer.
I think there's also got to be a change around. We found probably 3 years ago that we sat down, all of us, and revamped our training.
Yeah.
And we made ours a bit more kind of, I guess a bit more Insta friendly.
Yeah.
Ours is now broken down to 72 weeks, and they can see what they're meant to achieve in the weeks. And that has had a revolution for my youngsters, who the energy's there, but also the direction comes with it. That if they're at week 9 or week 10 and they know they've worked for us for 10 weeks and their education's on week 2, they can give us a bollocking, and we're giving them the right to give us a bollocking for it, and quite rightly.
Yeah.
And thankfully, because of our brilliant team of people, they normally get to week 10 and they're actually on about week 16, so they're feeling brilliant about themselves and enthused. So, but I did think we had to stop and really think about how we're portraying this to this generation. And I hear a lot of people, they don't want to, they're not interested, they can't, and they are. The energy and the enthusiasm is there, but you got to match it. And as a bit of an older fella who's been in the industry for decades, it's my job to make sure that I have that energy and that enthusiasm for it. And it's only done by that preparation, which presumably as a provider is part of your day-to-day.
Well, it is. Look, you've got to manage expectations. So first of all, different again to others, we don't start on day 1 and finish on day 150. We run our program to make sure that every learner gets what gets out of it what they need, gets out of it the ability to stand on the salon floor afterwards at the end of it, or barbershop floor at the end of it, which means some learners are going to take that a little bit longer, some are going to take that a little bit shorter. So whilst we have the basis of a program, obviously it's different because you're training your own in your salon. For us, we're training for sort of 40, 50 people.
Cool.
But it needs to be flexible. But I've said this a number of times. The tail can't wag the dog. There's still got to be rules in place. There was a lot of stuff post-pandemic. The apprenticeship needs to change. It needs to be shorter. It needs to be quicker. It needs to be this. Something. There's got to be rules everywhere in life. There does need to be rules. And sometimes I think we're so terrified of young people, and we want to make ourselves available for all people at all times. It doesn't quite work like that. There needs to be a strong framework. But that framework can be written with the help of young people by watching what they're doing.
Yeah.
The kids are changing.
It helps the store as much, it helps the business owner as much as it does the apprenticeship. We've certainly found by putting strong structure into ours that the onus is on us to provide, to be there.
Because at the end of the day, you want your business to keep improving, to keep growing, and the best growth are those that have come through your hands, who you've bred loyalty into, and you've bred them in your way. Yeah. So your barbershop has an image, a way. Whether it's a way of presenting a coffee, a tea, whether it's a way of presenting yourself, whether it's a way of saying goodbye to a client. That young person, it's your signature that you've put into them, and that's so important.
Yeah. Do you think there's a way of turning the local authority apprentice around? I've had conversations with a few people, Adam, hiya, about local authorities.
He said something brilliant. He said there's nothing wrong with the program. The program itself, it's how it's delivered, and he's absolutely right. Look, if you went into a college, and let's make the difference. An apprentice will work with a salon and might do their training through a college, which will be a bit better than a 2-day-a-week college course. There's nothing wrong with the framework. There's nothing wrong with the qualification. It's how it's delivered. Is it delivered by someone who hasn't been in a barbershop or a salon for 20 years? If so, what chance have they got? Is it being delivered by someone who's had no real training themselves, because the rules changed a few years ago when they couldn't find any assessors, where if you've got a level 2, you can teach level 2. That's terrifying in itself.
Yeah. But Adam was very keen that as barbers we should all kind of roll up our sleeves, turn up at the colleges and provide our time. And I after that went off and spoke to 3 colleges and couldn't get past the front desk.
No way. You terrify them because you've got skill.
So it's very difficult to break through that. But I'm very keen to. I do think, it's a big provider. You must see the numbers better than I do. But the local authorities are the first point of contact from the schools. So the kids wanting to get into this are joining that, and they're peeling off very quickly.
So the first thing I'm going to say to your listeners, guys, if you're running a great barbershop and you are keen to get young blood in, make the effort. Get into your local schools before the colleges do. They cannot refuse you. They cannot refuse you if you're talking about apprenticeships now. It's actually against the rules. You can go to your local authority and say, I've been blocked from attending. Get in there early. Go and get those kids. And if you like, rescue them before they even need rescuing.
I think that's the bit. I mean, I do think the problem is, and, having been hairdressing for 30 years and barbering, and a barbering company now for 10, there was definitely a 20-year period in there where there were very recognisable names in the industry that weren't really providing the education that they were promising. And you were seeing people really enthusiastic starting apprenticeships. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months in, they felt they were a glorified washer-upper, and were peeling out of the industry and going to do something else. And I think it's vital that we do keep that kind of stronghold on our quality and bring young people in and on.
You're absolutely right. You'll laugh. Even as tough as education's been the last few years, we've stopped training for certain salons. We've actually said we're not going to work with you anymore, because in fact, unless you're willing to back the training, in effect, all you've got is a cheap washer-upper and sweeper. And that's not what we want to do. It doesn't
as
work.
A store, you have to. We know how much effort we put into ours. Absolutely. And 90% of the people I speak to do much the same. You hope that we're gradually wheeling it out. But I like that. Like I say, Adam, I did try your route, but I think that idea of actually for us to get into schools, start emailing schools directly and contacting them regarding talking to them about their apprenticeships.
Do you know the funny thing, again, use your client base. I bet you've got someone in your client base that works at a school, with a school, parent of, who can get you straight in where you need to be. Look, I think also post-pandemic, we never gave ourselves enough credit when we first got back as an industry, barbering and hairdressing. Who did everyone miss for those 9 months? Yeah, there are a few naughty people that did hairdressing and barbering in the back of someone's house, in a shed during the pandemic, park those there. The majority of us didn't. We shut our businesses down. We didn't earn any money. We did nothing for that period. And our clients were desperate for us. Our clients were desperate. The best restaurants, one local to us, these guys were genius. They shut their restaurant. They got rid of all the waiting staff. They doubled the kitchen staff, put someone on a phone and handed out food morning, noon, night. They had the best 2 years they've ever had in life. The pubs shut the pub down, but opened up a plastic hatch on the side of the pub. You brought your plastic cup and you filled up with pints, and they made it work. We couldn't do it.
And upsettingly, just to jump in, they got exactly the same grants as we did. They got they got zero VAT, which is something I want to talk to you about. But they got their VAT reduced to 5% for 2 years, and this is an industry that's got at least a 9% reclaim. So they were in deficit for VAT, whereas from our point of view, we went in for 6 weeks, sometimes 3 months in between the lockdowns, and we incurred 20% VAT all the way along there. So no, sorry, but no, it irks me something rotten, I must admit.
It's completely like that. We were never given the break, but you know something? How many of us were picking the phone up to our clients, the ones who had no one else? I did it. Pick the phone every Friday. I made my phone call, sat on the phone for half an hour to a few of my clients I couldn't see. Yeah. We still did it. They missed us more than anything. And actually, we should have been screaming about that when everyone was talking about mental health and, the incredible things that people have suddenly realised now. We were at the centre of this because some of our wonderful clients, they didn't see anyone for those periods of time.
So I was amazed with ours that, when we reopened, we couldn't get, you couldn't fit everyone in week one. And from our point of view, we probably got fairly booked up for about six weeks immediately. And so amazed that people waited.
They did, didn't they?
Another month, even though there were other places. And that again comes back to the quality of your clientele. And I think you're absolutely right that it's the core of our business is our clientele. And I haven't thought of using them as a resource to find apprentices.
It's the best resource. I learned that from my friends Richard and Helen Ward.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We've been working with them for years. They're great friends of mine. And I remember the first time I went to their junior competition, however many years ago, and they had well in the teens apprentices. And we were talking about how did you get it? Oh, well, that's my uncle. That's my cousin. I looked around. Every single one of those apprentices were employed internally.
No, that's
they
amazing.
Knew someone, or their relative was a client. And I, honestly, I scream that from the rooftops. And barbershops are no different. Something?
That's fascinating.
You got some real loyal clients. They see what you do. They love what you do. They obviously understand your skill. Maybe they got your next generation.
Yeah, no, good shout. I like that. Just to turn it a little bit, we had a moment of my little rant there. It is something that bugged me because I lost a lot of friends, a lot of great companies that went because of the way we were treated in the pandemic or post-pandemic and all that kind of stuff. Evidently, our Chancellor was much more interested in everyone getting a burger and chips than they were about getting a haircut. And Barber, our industry suffered for it. Now, you are one of the pioneers. What was the founders? What would you class yourself of the salon?
We always say founders.
Founder, there you go. Of the Salon Employers Association.
Yeah.
Which if you haven't, join. But could we talk about that a little bit?
Of course we can.
I was very unhappy with the way we were treated, and we have to put the blame fairly on our industry's representation, who did nothing.
Right.
Now, the Salon Employers Association started with a very big vocal noise about how much we've been betrayed. Do you want to talk a little bit more with a bit more knowledge about it than I have?
Yeah. Look, first of all, to join us, we are representing VAT paying businesses. So there's been a bit of negative press recently where you don't represent us. No, we don't represent. We're not saying that you shouldn't be paying VAT. Everyone should pay. What we're saying is, initially, to give us a break as an industry, those who are paying it need to be cut down to 10%. Yeah. We're also looking at the ideas of parity because, of course, the VAT-paying salons are the ones who tend to be employing people, paying pensions, holidays, averaging out holiday salaries, then employing apprentices and putting all the training in. So we are the highest taxed on the high street. So our organisation isn't for everyone, Anthony. And I think it's really important that it's out there because there are other organisations.
And the big mantra for it, really, certainly at the moment, and that hopefully once we've had victory will change. But at the moment, the whole argument is about VAT and is about tax parity for the industry.
Look, it's just a really odd one that these hands are worth 20% more than someone else's, and they're the ones that do all the training. Yeah. Strikes me as a bit as a bit unfair. So
just to make it clearer, though, every business pays 20% VAT. Our industry, because we're mainly service-led and mainly people, our reclaim for our VAT is generally less than 4%.
Yeah.
So we're normally, hairdressers and barbers are paying round about 16 to 17% VAT.
Yeah.
Whereas jigsaw, warehouse, clothes shops, etc., they're selling a product, so they're reclaiming for what they've bought.
Yeah.
And so their reclaim will be between 9 and 11% VAT. And so they're paying between 9 and 11% VAT.
Correct.
And that's kind of, in the straightforward terms, that's where we're at. How are we getting on, I guess?
Well, I suppose, look, the issue is that many of the organisations that have purported to represent us for many years, it turns out, have been representing non-VAT payers in the main. So it's a bit like me coming to see, you're the Chancellor, like, oh, Tony, hello, mate, I'm representing the hairdressing industry. And you go to, what can the government do for you? I said, we need a cut in VAT. That's fantastic. How many of the industry pay VAT? About 10%, 12%. Sorry, can you say that a bit louder? Yeah, about 12%. We're representing maybe 5%. So you've come here asking for a VAT cut, but you're representing 95% of people who don't pay VAT. They laughed us out the room.
Yep.
What we're not saying is that those people don't count under any circumstance. What we're saying is that the small percentage, it may be 10, 12% of industry, maybe a bit more, that do pay VAT are the ones employing the majority of numbers. They're doing all the training, quite frankly, do need that break. There are businesses who, we've been contacted by salon owners who literally said, I'm walking in tomorrow and I'm just going to make everyone self-employed, which we know is illegal anyway, but they're being forced to do that. If there was more parity, if we got that 10% initial cut, the difference that might make to the industry now, listening to our members who've said, we're almost at the stage where just giving it up, it would make a huge difference.
And I think, where you have, we also, all of us are putting up with higher costs of everything we're getting, including our power and salaries and everything else. That's why I think that the Chancellor being able to show that VAT can be reduced to save an industry. So the hospitality industry got reduced down to 5%. And the theory was they were going to get a kick in, which they didn't all. Shows that the government does agree that VAT reduction is a way of helping some sectors. It just didn't see ours as part of that.
Because the problem was twofold. The problem was that the government were listening to representation from groups that really didn't represent people paying VAT. So, of course, they're almost laughed out of a room, if you like. Yeah. They were being told by other organisations that look, there's shops opening up every day in our industry because we're grouped together, the personal care sector grouped together with beauty, if you like, lipstick sellers online, makeup. Oh, it's wonderful, it's great, and the industry's growing. Well, hold on a minute. Yeah. It might be online, not for us who are employing, who are renting properties, who are doing all of that on the high street.
Now, I got my letter back from my MP, which is on our Insta, so have a read. And it wasn't the jubilant excitement that I was hoping for. But obviously that's just mine. And who knows, I may have a lousy MP. But response for you, how are you finding most MPs? Are we finding friends within our members of parliaments that are on side for this?
I think you may have seen on SEA, Pauline Latham MP has been an incredible supporter of us. We've spoken to a number of MPs. Nikki Aiken, Errol Douglas went to see. She's very supportive. We've had a lot of support, but it's going to that next stage. You know, it's great to have the support, but it's for someone to say, you know something, let's give this industry a break. Because, you know, great things can happen if we were to reduce the VAT.
Sure.
But again, it's talking about things like, what do we actually represent? It's not just a haircut, is it? It is that personal service on the high street. We had a little wander just before. What's going to bring people back to that high street? It's not your chain of coffee shops because you can get coffee anywhere. It's not your clothes shop because you can do it online. It's the barber shop, the hairdresser that has cyclical visits where someone says, whilst I'm on the high street, I like the look of that jumper, I'm going to buy it. I need a birthday card, I'm going to go and actually look for one. Do you know what? It's a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I'm going to take that home for my missus, for my mother. That's what I'm going to do. It's our industry that fuels whatever else goes on the high street. And that's what we need to make someone understand.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly where we're at, unfortunately. I think it's time the government recognise exactly how vital. You know, I'm very tired of hearing the phrase, we need to bring the high street back. And it's straightforward. This is what brings people to the high street. No one wanders down a high street to look at houses in windows anymore. They do have to come and get their haircut.
They have to, and that's the only reason to come back onto that high street, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because everything else you can literally access via a computer.
Yeah. Well, and lockdown showed that we can't do our gig online. You do have to get off. You do have to get out your chair and come and get a haircut, mate. Delightful to talk to you. I've had, like I say, Alan D has run through the kind of my hairdressing industry, obviously from your father, and now hopefully we'll be talking about yours in another 30 years' time, and Alan D's continued career path. I do hope we can get you back and talk more detail and more apprentices. It's definitely where I want to keep pushing our industry to keep bringing young people in and make sure the education comes through. I do think it'd be great to make sure we've got Alan D's contacts so that people can make inroads with you about how we go for apprentices. And obviously we respond to everything here. But if you're okay to receive any communication, it'd be nice to forward and make sure that you can help. It
would be an absolute pleasure. You know, it's great to talk to people, and sometimes just by talking to someone, you pick up something that you might not have known, you might not have heard. Sometimes there's all sorts of untruths that go around with certain things. People are frightened. Just pick up the phone, message me. I'm happy to talk to anyone. You know, it's what we do for a living. We've got a lot of experience.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, mate.
Great, thank you so much.
Glad to meet you finally. Well done. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching this episode of The Noble Barber. If you liked it, please do like and subscribe. If you've got comments of what we should be doing in future, please give us your questions and we'll try and find an expert to talk to. Or if you're the expert and you want to come on here and help, stay in touch, we'll get you on. Come and join us on the sofa.